Asset information systems really encompasses everything from a localized spreadsheet all the way through to an enterprise resourcing planning tool or an enterprise asset management system. We need to look at the implementation of those systems, how they collect, store, analyze, and of course share asset data among stakeholders and across the life cycle. We need to ensure that systems integrate wherever possible and work together across the organization. An interface between two systems is they're aware of each other, and integration between two systems means they work as a whole. Aligning systems with broader digital and data strategies. What is your information and data strategy for your organization? How do you embark on things like AI, ML, lessons learned, privacy, etc.? Making sure systems are secure, reliable, user-friendly, but I'd also add in there user accessible. And then, of course, continually reviewing the system use and adopting new technologies wherever it's beneficial. The world of IT and OT is significantly changing day by day. The old way of going to a single system as way of a mainframe, those days are long gone. So we might have a lot more information at our fingertips through various systems, but the governance that goes with that needs to take on a new focus in today's world. It's one thing to create a system, roll out a system, enable a system. It's another thing for people to actually use it. And user adoption is absolutely critical, not just in the system in front of them, but what that system represents in terms of supporting the organization. And of course, the training and the competency that's required to do so. So the risk here, and it's a very real risk, is of course staff struggle with the new system. They either don't like the convenience of the old system, the old workflow, etc., and they just revert to spreadsheets or their localized systems, or even worse, working completely outside the system in totality. So one way around that is, of course, role-based training. I'm not going to get into functional roles and composite roles in this suite of courses, but that is a real important consideration. What is the ongoing support? And wherever possible, those user-friendly interfaces. Integration, just as the coordinated activity of the organization goes, integration is really probably a parallel back to information technology and operational technology. The real risk here is systems don't talk to one another, leading to duplication, gaps, errors, omissions, etc. Wherever possible, and this isn't always possible in terms of funding, timing, and the context, would be wherever possible to align system design with overarching enterprise IT strategies and testing that interoperability. We need to do this together because the business will have a strategy, IT will have a technology strategy. They're often on different timelines and, of course, don't always complement one another. So again, getting that co-design happening will lead to a better outcome than just leaving the business to do what they do or just leaving IT to make decisions on behalf of the business. There's a real risk in any organization around data security, and that security of information leaking from the organization and poor data getting into the system itself. Misusing can create reluctance to use a system in its entirety, but also when we talk about data security and trust, it's also people maybe taking information out of a system. But again, if you wind it up so tight and you make things so prescriptive and locking down USB devices, etc., you can actually go the opposite way and people will just start to say this is all too hard and we're not getting value from it. So a way around that is to build confidence through clear cyber policies. Again, looking at organizational controls, technical controls, just pick up ISO 27001 or Google Statement of Applicability, and you can find there's lots of ways to actually build both their security and trust with little expense. Again, this entire course is centered around change, organizational change management, but also addressing the reality of change resistance. In the context of information systems, staff will often and default to seeing a new system as a disruption to their day-to-day activities. They might see it as costly or completely unnecessary. They may not be aware of an IT strategy to resolve security concerns, or they may not see an overarching business strategy that's going to see you expand into different ways of working with external stakeholders. So the obvious starting point is to communicate the benefits, the why, involving users early. And it might not be around co-design, especially if you're standing up a commercial off-the-shelf system, but by involving them early, understanding what their fears are, what their concerns are, you can address them, and then from a change perspective, create and highlight the quick wins along the way. Keeping pace with technology is multifaceted. You shouldn't be chasing technology just for the sake of implementing. That would be a cost and you probably run more risk. But if we don't keep pace and an understanding of where technology is going, we can fall behind, which is a disadvantage for an organization. But from an IT perspective, not keeping pace with technology can actually open up to a bigger delta in operating systems, vulnerability in operating systems, security patches, etc. So there's a balance between keeping up with technology for the sake of advancement and maybe industry advantage versus the risk of not keeping up with it and being painted into a corner. So the risk here is systems can't be outdated or they're too old. I've experienced that firsthand where keeping an old computer in the background running just for the sake of it because no one thought to update it. But if we can build system roadmaps with IT, with OT and the business, we can actually review and actually consider funding and investment to keep them relevant and fit for purpose for the organization. More and more, I see the emerging risk around IT and asset teams working separately, working sometimes in parallel if you're lucky, but really not engaging properly across the life cycle and down through the organization. This leads to mismatched needs, requirements, gaps, overlaps, and a lot of the time frustrations, not understanding why things cost so much. But if we can involve end users, the IT department, asset managers, operational technology considerations. So when we go through and looking at system selection, we aren't just looking at feature, we're not just looking at function, we're actually looking at the true requirement. And the requirement is what will bridge together the cross-functional consideration and, of course, bring us back to the coordinated activity of an organization. Alignment back to ISO 55001, 7.1 resources, because of course IT is a resource in its own right. 7.5, understanding what is the documented information we actually require, which really then leads us into, 7.6, data and information as a whole. And then of course 7.7, knowledge, and incidentally 7.6 and 7.7 were newly introduced into 2024 version of the standard. So in summary, data and information systems are the digital backbone of asset management, enabling evidence-based decisions and efficient operations. It is so important, however, to include information technology, operational technology, and the business together in the conversation, because we do run the risk if IT go in one direction and the business go in another. We create risk, we lose performance, and costs go through the roof, and ultimately we erode value